As more and more people get into classic cars, accessories becomes important also. And after you buy a car, second thought usually is about car stereo. I couldn't find detailed video about this topic, so decided to do myself. In this video, I will go step by step with necessary information you need to know, which later will help you to make a right decision what option to use in your classic car. I will not talk about the modern stereo, as I think it's not acceptable to have it in your classic car. So let's begin with a short review of the history. Modern car audio systems are so highly involved, so seamless and so intuitive. It's easy to forget that it wasn't always this way. But it's been 90 years since the first mass-produced radio appeared, and the road to audio perfection has been a bumpy one indeed. Before audio, there was a car telegraph. In 1901, Guglielmo Marconi installed a telegraph in a steam-powered wagon. It received and transcribed Morse code telegraph messages. Radio receivers didn't become available until about 1920s, as the vacuum tube technology progressed. Initially, people would bring heavy portable radios in the cars, complete with separate batteries, and set up antennas. Because electrical interference from the engine caused static, and radios could only be used when the car was turned off. So, when the first car commercial radio appeared? Some historians argue that the first car radio was installed by Kelly Motors in New South Wales, Australia, in 1924. Lamb says the first entrepreneur to go into radio commercial was William Hayner, who founded Hayner Phone Corporation around 1926, which later becomes Philco and was eventually acquired by Philips. But it was a precursor to Motorola, Galvin Manufacturers Corporation, that introduced the first mass-market radio in June 1930s. It didn't have a brand name at first, says Stephen O'Bannon, Texas-based principal staff engineer for Motorola. Brothers Paul and Joseph Galvin's first radio ran on 6 vacuum tubes, took about 10 liters of cargo space, received AM signals only, was housed in a wooden case, and was powered by 2 high-voltage batteries stashed under the passenger seat, plus the car's battery. It costed $130, when the entire Ford Model A was priced $540. To cut down on static, spark plugs were fitted with a suppressor that actually downgraded the performance of the engine. It was a fine balance between getting reception and having a car work at all. Paul Galvin realized that the radio needed a brand, created Prometeo of the motor car, and the suffix Ola, slang for anything audio that came up with a Motorola. Later, innovations came quickly. Galvin introduced a series of innovations to its Motorola's radios. By the early to mid-1930s, there was no need for spark plug suppressors. Radios could run on the car's battery alone, and volume was automatically adjusted for the broadcast strength of the radio transmitter. Motorola introduced the first dash-mounted radios in the mid of 1930s. By the late 1930s, push-button AM radio were a common option for cars. And later, FM makes its debut in the 50s. AM radio was plagued by static interference and poor sound quality, so FM prototypes were being tested by the late 30s. Blaupunkt, a German company, produced the first FM radio for cars in 1952. Within a year, Becker Audio Sound produces a combined AM and FM radio. And later, FM grew steadily, became the most popular band. Transistors arrived in 1955. Radios were powered by hot, bulky and fragile vacuum tubes that needed to warm up before the radio would come on. Bellinger said road vibrations could cause them all to fail frequently. To get the radios out of service, you had to reach under the dash, to unscrew, to disassembly, and so on. It was quite difficult. By 1955, Chrysler offered an old transistor Mopar radio as an option for $150 on its 1956 models Chrysler Imperial cars. That's the equivalent of $1,500 today, so the uptake was limited. After Chrysler experience, automakers reverted to hybrid radios with a mix of transistors and vacuum tubes. Full transistor radios did not appear again until the early 60s, when Becker unveiled a solid-state radio with no vacuum tubes. Although radios were an option, by 1963, 50 million cars in the United States, more than 60%, had them. And later, recorded music goes mobile. Chrysler brought recorded music to cars with the first in-car phonographic in 1956. So the called highway hi-fi came with a mini turntable mounted under the passenger side dash. It was ridiculous, skipping tracks at every bump. Yet researchers were undeterred. Engineer Earl Moons transformed the mobile music world when he unveiled 4-track audio tape cartridge technology in the early 1960s. Ford and Motorola jointly introduced the 8-track tape player as an optional equipment for the Ford in 1966, and the design dominated car audio through the 70s. The devices were notorious for fading out mid-song while we switched to the next stereo track, and also for eating tapes, but they were simply to operate and relatively cheap. Cassettes became the medium of choice. Even as the 8-track was enjoying in heyday, Philips unveiled the first compact cassette in 1964. Initially, the sound was muddy, but tape quality steadily improved until 1979, when the Sony introduced the first Walkman, bringing portable recorded music to the masses. Cassettes allowed individuals to create their own playlist, and they provided to be hugely popular through the 80s. And later began the CD era, and so on. So for today's history, I think it's enough for you to understand how the car radio developed. How to choose the right radio? I would say that there is 6 main brands to focus on: Motorola, Philips, Telefunken, Becker, Blaupunkt, and Grundig. Becker and Telefunken were approved suppliers of Mercedes-Benz radios, and the Becker Mexico was the top of the line for the ponton passenger cars of the 1953 to 1962 period. In addition to the radios made by Becker and Telefunken, the factory also improved the dealership installation of radios made by Blaupunkt and Philips. Even though these of other fine radio manufacturers offered special installation kits, it is interesting to note that the radio was the most expensive option on the car. In Europe, the FM radio band was 87.5 MHz to 100 MHz up to until mid-60s, when it was expanded to 108 MHz. I have been led to understand that the French police were using the frequencies above 100 MHz until the mid-60s, this preventing Germany and other European countries from including these frequencies in the public FM broadcasting spectrum. Increasing the FM frequencies range to 108 MHz on early radios is possible, but the lower frequencies will be lost. These were heavy vacuum tube radios, which had equally massive power supplies mounted separately under the dash. Also available was Becker-Reims adapter for shortwave reception, which was attached to the lower portion of the radio under the speaker cabinet. In America and Australia, the long-wave broadcasting band was not in widespread use, so the car radios built for export did not include it. All of these radios can be used in two options, or on 6 volts or 12 volts, by changing the frequency modular, also known as a chopper, buzzer, or vibrator, and some jumpers on the old G-type transformer and by a switch in the later transistor-powered supplies. Around 1958, as technology advanced, the heavy power supplies were first replaced by smaller solid-state transistor units. In the early 60s, the electronical parts got smaller enough that the power supply was being included in the tuner and amplifier as a self-contained unit. By 1962, tubes finally disappeared from automobile radio design altogether. So, as you're still watching my video, you probably understood that there is a lot of information and not so easy to understand which radio you need to choose and do you will able to listen the radio broadcasting. For this purpose, I have a best solution available, and it is a Bluetooth. As you can see here, I have in my hands a Bluetooth model, which can be used with all the radios I mentioned. And in general, it's very easy, because most radios about which I'm talking today have the possibility to connect the Bluetooth model. And as you can see here, on the back of the radio, in my hands is a Becker Europe model, Courier. At the back of the radio, you could see the hole where I can connect this Bluetooth adapter. There is a couple options. There is usually 5 pins or 6 pins versions. So before buying the Bluetooth model, you have to check on your radio. And if you want to know more about how the Bluetooth model connects to your phone, you can check here my previous video, which I did about how to connect the connected model from the radio to your phone. And you can listen music from your playlist, from your any app which you have on your phone. So, and if you want to buy this model, you can contact me directly and you can get it for 100 euros. I build them here locally. They all tested and they work in condition and they are the best on the market. And I ship worldwide. So, doesn't matter where you live, Australia, US, any part of the world. Just text me and I will come back to you with a shipping quote. So now, probably after this video, you will know much more about the vintage radios for your classic car. Also, I not only sell Bluetooth models, but you also can buy from me a radio which has been tested, refurbished. So, if you have trouble to decide which radio is best for your classic car, you can always contact me and together we will find the best model, the best option for your classic car. And later, the radio you can buy directly from me. Even if I don't have the model which you are interested in right now, I can organize it for you. Because also I have a database where is exactly model specified with which radio came as a factory or as a factory option. So the most important thing is knowledge and information. I hope you liked my video. Please subscribe my channel if you're not subscribing yet, because more and more different topics about the classic cars, about the restoration projects, other things related to the classic car culture will be discussed on my channel. So, as always, greetings from Vilnius, thank you for your time, and see you next time. Bye.